And what a day it has been. Wow, I'm not sure the gods want us to trash analyst relations today. Uh, Bonnie and Josh, we've overcome a lot of obstacles to go live today. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you. It's been a fun morning.
Yes, we're alive and we're here. It's all
A
good.
lot of transportation issues, and then Josh just disappears. Um, but
He's had
we're
enough
going to give
already.
him another time. Yeah. A lot of transportation and logistics issues today, but we are here. Hopefully, there are some folks out there in the audience too. Feel free to chime in. Let us know how the stream is going. If you want the alternate stream on YouTube, I can provide it for you. This show is absolutely a live experiment on the topic of analyst relations. Why does it need to change? Does it need to change? How? I couldn't ask for two better colleagues. Seen you all in a lot of analyst events, raising your hands, asking those pesky questions, pushing for answers, getting that dialogue, getting that friction. That's kind of what folks like us live for, right?
Big time.
So,
Yeah.
okay,
No,
so here's what I did, dear audience. Uh, I fed a bunch of content into. Brian's got some salty. Yeah. Josh stole one of my hats.
actually, but this is Brian. Did you see
Yeah.
this is actually in honor of Bonnie and Raven Intel?
I
Oh wow.
gosh, I could not be happier with your
I'll,
choice.
I'll find you one. It's a state park in Oregon that sells them.
Best bird.
Brian, try not to be jealous of the Raven swag.
Raven,
and-
blue
and-
Raven swag.
And by the way, if you want more salty analyst commentary from Brian, in addition to the chat today, Brian and I are 2 weeks from today. We'll do another month in review, so he will be back in the chair, and I'm sure he'll have a head of steam. So look, here's what happened. I wanted to advance this topic of next gen analyst relations, why analyst relations need to change, and I was looking for some fresh ways forward. So I compiled all my research and content on this topic, which includes surveys with various analysts, all of this, and I uploaded it into an AI tool, Notebook LLM, along with a bunch of AI research that I'm not going to show you today. And so there's kind of a meta story here, which is we're going to review some content created by AI that's going to propose some solutions to analyst relations from an AI creation perspective. This could really go wrong, don't you think?
It's got all kinds of possibilities.
Yeah. So here's what I did. I've shown Josh and Bonnie a little bit of this collateral already, but we're going to go through it live, and we're going to have some live reactions to it. And there's a few different ways this can go because we're going to judge it kind of based on its merits in terms of the ideas, but we also might poke some holes in it and say, why is it saying that? That's wrong. And then I'm going to be on the honor system to tell you if it was my bad idea or if it was AI making up a bad idea, or, which is a more subtle point, is AI kind of emphasizing the wrong set of ideas or hitting on one thing more than it should. So there's all kinds of ways this can go wrong, but I think it's going to be really fun. And in addition to a slide deck, I have a video and an audio podcast. So we'll see what we can get to. And Sarita is here. And Sarita recently had me on a panel of independent analysts. Sarita runs analyst relations for Sugar and whatever Sugar is called now. We should probably be up to speed on that. But anyway, Sarita, welcome. And
It will tell us, right?
yeah, exactly.
It's a brand name to work with.
Yeah, exactly. But I will forever think of it as Sugar. Sorry, it's been drilled into my brain for so long. That's what being a crusty curmudgeon is all about. But Sarita, thanks for being there. And I did invite a bunch of AR directors to this event. So we'll see how many of them show up, but they will be getting the replay. Now, there's something I want to say about this before I start showing you the content, which is that this topic is a challenging one. Like how we change amidst all this disruption. And it's really easy to start over criticizing, for example, analyst relations directors. And that was a problem I saw with this material because I can be a little satirical in how I present this content. So one of the first things I did was like how to screw up an analyst day. So the AI has access to that, which is pretty sarcastic. Oh yeah, we're going sugar AI now. So the sugar's still there, but we're now all about AI, not
Got it.
just CRM. So anyway, so so basically, what you tell the AI, as many of you know, affects what you get out of the AI. And so, what I found, and I'll just be flat out honest before we get into these slides, is I found the slides we're going to look at today, this particular deck, to lack, I guess, a little bit of empathy for the situation that AR directors face. But let's just put it out there right away, Josh and Bonnie. Being an AR director is a hard job. Let's just acknowledge that.
Yeah, it's sort of rock and a hard place, stuck in the middle, without a doubt, in most cases. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll
Some
get
folks
into
make it harder for themselves than they need to.
yes, right. Right. And there, look, it's fair game to hold feet to the fire a little bit on some of that stuff, but I guess I found that this particular deck, and one of the reasons why I'm not releasing this content into the wild as it sits, is because I didn't feel it really captured that challenge of, like, a lot of AI directors that I speak to really want to foment change inside their organizations, but they also have to, juggle relationships with classic big three vendors. And look, these slides are not going to go easy on the big three vendors. So let's just also say that I think you two are probably like me. We have friends at all these big shops, and there are a lot of capable people that work for these large firms. So unfortunately, AI took my criticisms of these big three firms and just kind of wrote them up as legacy artifacts, which is a little bit simplistic. So I just want to acknowledge that. And finally, there's one other thing I want to say, which is this particular deck I thought was visually striking, which is one of the reasons that I chose it. And oh wow, do I have some spam? Am I? Oh, Brian. Oh, he wants to set
Brian
up a
is
phone
sending
call.
you spam. I'm sorry, Brian
Oh,
is sending you spam.
oh,
An
thank you.
example of what's spam. We should get to that soon, but yeah.
Yeah, we will get Brian. We will get to that. Gain insights from Nameless. Yeah. Well, so anyway, the final thing I want to say is I chose a striking visual deck, and we're going to have a look at the first thing now. But before we do that, I just want to say the reason when you see good visuals out of AI is because it's been trained off the back of illustrators and designers who are never compensated, most of them, for any of that material. So I just want to acknowledge that there's some ethical gray area in what we're doing here, and to say on your next project, hire a real human designer, illustrator, and creator. These are brilliant people. A lot of them are underfunded right now, and they will do an awesome job. And I've used some of them on my last book, and I will use them again. So do not think of this as a substitute for them. And with that, you can see that this slide deck. Would you agree that this AI rendition, Josh and Bonnie, captures a little bit of like John Reed vibe? Because I think it does. Look at this. It's got a strike through like I always use. That's pretty nice, huh?
It's pretty good. Yeah. By the way, we should tell the audience that John sort of kind of strictly forbade us from really studying this deck before this this event. We were supposed to be able to respond ad hoc and in the moment. So, but I did look at this one. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
John.
That's right. So we're giving you gut reactions right now. My initial one is this looks a little 80s.
Little 80s. Well, I am a child of the 80s, though, Bonnie.
That's true. So
Oh wow, it nailed you.
So,
Probably did a history search.
I think that's kind of like actually pretty cool. Anyway, I think the design looks good. It looks like something I would have wanted to do if I had any talent with slides.
mhm.
So
I would add an adjective to that, by the way, in front of brain dump, like meaningless, mind-numbing brain dump. But we're going to get to that, right?
we are. So okay, so have a look at the Standard Analyst Summit agenda, folks. That dictation practice, 150 slides of dictation, Josh, that's from you, man. That traces
It's
back
actually
to
it's actually got it's shut up and take dictation. It's an important note that I think the AI missed. It's by the way, dictation does not provide time for you to ask important questions. Or if you ask questions, excuse me, we're gonna hold the questions for the end, which will then run over and there won't. Sorry, we'll take questions later. So yeah, shut up and take dictation. But yeah, there we go.
I don't know. I think the slide's pretty good. I mean, the slathered in NDAs part is a little maybe over the top, but the overuse of NDAs can create a lot of problems in terms of sharing material with our constituents and with buyers and all of that. Any comments on this slide?
Oh, I have comments. Bonnie.
Yeah. I, I would say that, for the most part, we don't see this often, where we have an agenda that looks like this. Sometimes the 150 slides is accurate. Um, but I would say the the biggest critique on this one, the scripted softball questions only during, customer panels and things like that, or not allowing Q&A during customer panels. That's always annoying.
Yeah.
My
I
view. Oh, go ahead, Josh. Let's hear
I want to
yours.
riff on that just a little bit because not only is the customer panel moderated, but we have been subject to many admonitions. Please don't mess up the customer. Don't do, don't embarrass the customer. We can't let you ask questions because you're going to do something to the customer. And I can't tell you how many times I've told the AI professionals, hey, guess what? They're our customers too, or our prospects. Do you think we would get up there and embarrass someone in front of, like ask a bad question, like do something stupid? Like, why would, and I'm going to just preface all that with, at every junction in this deck, I'm going to be asking myself the question, does this deck understand that we as analysts and very often the AR team should have the same general goal in mind, which is that we're all trying to make customers successful, all of us, all the time. We're not trying to screw anybody. We're not necessarily on the vendor side, but we're definitely on the customer side. And everything I'm going to say here is going to be couched in that kind of basic, fundamental thing. I feel like I have to say to too many AR professionals too often.
Right. And yeah, Sarita's not too impressed with the graphics and the fill in the blanks for dummy series. Sarita, what I would say is, man, you should have seen the decks that I'm not showing you today. And but anyway, the strike throughs in the handwritten stuff kind of echo a little bit of my style. Brian says, I think softball questions is too harsh. Make it wiffle ball questions. Yeah, there are some meatballs over the plate with the over moderated panels, and I think it's okay to let go of that. The I to me this slide is pretty much on with a lot of the things that I've written. That I think that's yeah, it's not presented as a brain dump, but the whole thing is so often we feels like we run out of valuable QA time as the pressure builds to cover a certain amount of pre-planned material, and I see that dynamic again and again at analyst events. And by the way, the slide deck is not just about events. By the way, the one thing I would say though is that we optimize for vendor ego. I did not use that phrase in my writing. Like AI took that and ran with it, and I don't think I would say that. I would say that we optimize for, kind of our overall messaging, um, rather than, dialogue. I would say that would be the distinction I would make there. But anyway,
Could you back up to the first slide real quick? Just
yeah.
stop the brain dump, build the parallel path. Now forward a second. Bring us back to that other one.
Yeah, and Opal, I mean, a lot of AR folks have improved upon this format, obviously. So, it's great to run into AR directors who are changing things up, and I'm seeing that more, and I did note that in my most recent article as well. So,
Give me the next slide.
shout out to those that are, and if you missed the beginning, I did acknowledge that this particular deck is not, I would say, not empathetic enough to AR directors for a variety of reasons. Let's hear from Sarita on this real quick, and Bonnie, hold your thought. Josh, I've heard from AR pros that are more worried about what the analyst might ask about the company. Um, she doesn't totally agree with that, so that's something we can continue to talk about.
Yeah.
Versus putting customers on the spot. Anyway, Bonnie, what did you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, just starting from the beginning on the next slide that you had. I mean, I think the very best analyst meetings that we go to have a solid opener where they are very clear. Here is what we want you to walk away with. Here are the things that at the end of this meeting, you should be able to answer about what's new with our company, with our product. And then and this is something so simple. It's 101, but half of the time it never happens, is for the moderator or maybe the director of AR to introduce who is in the room, not only the the senior executives and presenters, right? So people have a quick read on the room, but also, tell us who the composition of the room is. Why am I sitting next to my peer analysts who are here? Obviously, if it's a huge one, that is, that's harder. But why did you invite this collection of, this motley crew here? What about us was significant that all of us are sitting here? So I think sometimes just giving us a general who's who in the zoo is so helpful, because some of the very best things that we walk away with from some of these meetings is the interaction between our peers, the other analysts, and and the vendor, and sort of understanding who's here before, by the end, we always figure that out. But if we have a solid foundation with who are my peers that are here, that's always really, really cool.
By the way, did one of you have a ding that's going off? Because that's going to drive me a little nuts. Is it like a messaging
Bonnie's
ding?
sister is pinging her.
Yeah, my crazy text message. Sorry about that.
No worries. Brian is giving us his version of the wiffle ball question. So, customer, this would be somewhat a question during the customer moderated panel, the dangers of the overly moderated panel. So, customer, why did you choose our award-winning industry leading outstanding market solutions? And don't spare the superlatives. And yeah, for the customer panel, it's just so great when they just kind of open it up. Maybe ask one question if they want to, then just open it up to the analysts and let's see what we learn. We are not making a lot of progress on the slides, but that's okay because I really wanted to have a discussion anyway.
So wait, back up one, because I do have a point I wanted to make quickly.
Okay.
So it's gathered in NDAs. If we are, let's give credit where credit is due. If we're going to build a parallel path, and we're going to have a dialogue, particularly about future roadmaps, I'm okay with an NDA that says we're going to open we're going to open up to you. We're going to tell you what we're doing. We want your feedback. We all were at a very interesting interactive session like that earlier this year, where they really genuinely wanted to test it and it was brave of this vendor. I don't know if we should be naming names or not. They probably
No,
should.
I don't think we'll name names on that, but yeah.
But I think it was very courageous for them to do it. I think they got a lot of value out of it. And yeah, we were slathered in an NDA, understandably, but we also got to really have a dialogue about what mattered. I like that. So I'm okay with the NDA thing for future roadmaps. If it's as long as it's not shut up and take dictation, but really we want to interact with.
So just real quick on that, like here's another example of like AI not really representing my views accurately, because I didn't use the phrase slathered in NDAs to the best of my knowledge. And what I talk about is clarity around what's NDA and what's not, and making it easy for everyone to understand. And totally, Josh, if you're talking about like a very confidential back and forth with executives, that's beautiful. That's why we all get on planes, and no problem. NDA the heck out of that if we need to. But on that same event, there was a customer panel that I felt didn't need to be NDA'd at all and would have benefited from broader exposure. So the point is, like, think through it, try to think about what can be exposed and what can't. And, I think we are seeing some improvements there, to be honest with you, but this is what AI does. AI seizes upon certain things. And, the way I take it is, let's have a talk about it. Let's get clear on why we need this stuff, and let's not use it liberally, but let's use it in a discerning way. Okay, so yeah, you can't control the narrative. Customers have BS detectors. I think we all understand that. Let's move on a little bit. Okay, here we go.
This one.
All right. reactions.
Yeah, we don't care about the quadrant.
So that, yeah, our poor colleagues who have to live and die by them, I appreciate that. But I mean, John, one of the things that you did ask us to sort of think about is, and I'll bring that forward here is, what are some of the better ways to measure value and what are some of the metrics? And I want to sort of throw out this something here that's very relevant to the Magic Quadrant wave, trapezoidal, blah, 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 is this notion about point solution and the idea that the differentiator, I think, between a lot of us independent analysts and a lot of our colleagues who are very domain um, locked into a domain and locked into a quadrant viewpoint is the fact that more and more, if I'm going to have the very, very best supply chain in the industry as a customer, it's not going to be because I picked the very, very best supply chain planning solution point over. It's because I'm doing something much more comprehensive and strategic than just that. And the thing that I want to emphasize, because I think not every AR professional understands this, is that kowtowing to the Magic Quadrant perpetuates a point solution mentality that ill serves the customer as much as it ill serves the vendor. And one of the things I really feel like we independents have done a lot of good work on is to say, it's try to break down that mentality a little bit. That they want the end customer wants the intent process. It wants that bigger perspective than all that you're just going to get from a Magic Quadrant. So I like this slide. I like that because those are 2 points, as you can tell, I get up on the soapbox quite a bit.
I mean, the reason that this is shown so often, the quadrant or the comparison chart, is because it makes it really easy to, have a boilerplate like, yep, we're better than our competition, next slide. And like, first of all, anybody in the room who's an analyst and not part of the company that produces this, immediately it's a turn off, right? Because we sort of have a predisposition as to this quadrant and how much trust we're putting in that. So besides one other company, the company who produces this, the rest of the analysts are like, okay, that I don't trust that at all. So it almost does more harm than good to show this quadrant. However, that doesn't, like, what we want to see though is competitively, where do you fit in terms of your product and your go to market, strategy, your customer base, things like that. Give us why you're in the upper right. Don't show us the upper right, or if you do it quickly, but tell us, why you are unique and why you are better than your peers. And you can name your peers. I mean, that's totally fine. But I don't think the quadrant helps in conveying that.
Yeah, and look, one of the reasons why this slide deck was called the parallel path, which was an AI name, but it kind of summarizes some of my views, is I'm not saying that we trash all this, and I understand that customers still use these as reference documents, and that's part of the job. The idea is, how do we build a parallel path that emphasizes a different kind of value and a different kind of dialogue, and maybe eventually that parallel path becomes bigger and more rewarding for everyone involved. Laura raises an important point. Often customers want their sessions to be under NDA because their companies have internal processes about being publicly referenced. And it's a really good point. And I do want to say that I think all customer panels, especially ones that are pretty open and not over moderated, have a lot of value. I would just say that, why not try to get reference customers that are comfortable speaking on the record at analyst events? Because every vendor does have customers that are used to speaking publicly. So why not prioritize those customers? Because especially if you have a whole day that's NDA, it's really nice to have one segment that's customer based that is not, because you can then take that, and that's for the good of everyone to be able to take that dialogue forward. I just wrote about some amazing customers from a vendor that were on stage, and I think those customers probably would have been more than willing to sit with some analysts and have a similar conversation. So anyway, it's kind of pros and cons. It's kind of feeling your way through a day and figuring out like, is there something here that's shareable, and then we can emphasize more confidential discussions as well. But it's a hard thing. I mean, look, events are hard. We all get them wrong. I've thrown events. I've thrown bad events, so I know. Anyway, so okay, so here's our parallel path slide. Reactions, please.
See, you can tell we've not seen this before. He's mean. He wouldn't let us look at this.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I think the without a doubt, the two-way unscripted dialogue is the most value that I think a lot of us walk away with after these events is not only being able to ask the candid questions of the vendor team, but also hearing our peers vendor, questions of the vendors as well. And it's definitely an art to be able to facilitate that Q&A process. I mean, I see a lot of people in the comments saying that, it definitely is gives them some twitchiness, right? I think about those questions. On the other hand, it is the best way for all of us to learn is to be able to have those conversations, and also for the vendor to learn, hey, what is everybody truly thinking? Yes, they ask a survey at the end, but if they can walk away and actually have analysts provide value and that feedback live, I think that's a home run.
I think the customers mingling freely with analysts. I want to riff a little bit on Laura's comment because I think it was a good one, and she's absolutely right that some customers don't want that dialogue. Do you want to comment on this first, Sarita? Okay. But I think that this gold standard is absolutely real. Mingling freely with customers. John and I go to a particular event every year. Again, we're not shouting out people, but I think you'll know if you're on this call who we're talking about. If that's you, where we just hey, your meeting is over there. At 10:30, go talk to that customer. They're interested to talk to you. No one is there. No handlers. No one checking boxes. Just have a conversation. And to a large extent, it's 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 a to me, it's testimony to the quality of the vendor's customer base that you find people who are willing to do that. So yeah, there are customers who simply cannot. Sorry, you know, have all kinds of big corporate, ugly policies that they have to respect. But maybe you need to, find the ones who don't have that, and focus more on that because that to me is this. There's just no comparison in terms of the value of the conversations. None at all.
yeah, and just a couple nits to pick on the AI content creation side. Like that word muzzled, I would not have used that. I think that's a gross overstatement. Uh, and then again, we have slathered in NDAs again, right? Like, so AI has a way of seizing upon certain things and reemphasizing it. But I think the parallel path part of this looks resonant to me, and I think represented my views pretty well. Um, Sarita, really good back and forth in the chat about customers, and this kind of customer advocacy stuff is really important. And Josh, I think you mentioned that analysts tend to be very respectful of customers, and I've certainly seen that with folks like yourself and Brian who might press executives pretty hard on an issue, but like with a customer, it's more about understanding their story, and and everyone needs to kind of have that respectful atmosphere. And I think we've seen a lot of that. I think the presence of customers at these events have generally gotten better. But I will say, many years ago, I attended an analyst event that really mixed their VIP customer session with the analyst day, and it was really spectacular. And I think there's even more that can be done there. But I will say, in general, I think that part of analyst days has improved a lot from the event perspective. So
And I think all of the analysts appreciate how difficult it is to get a customer to come in, take time out of their day, fly in from wherever, or multiple to do that on a panel. So I mean, I having done in the past life that job before. I mean, it's not easy to get that, and I think all of the analysts definitely appreciate it, but allowing for the format of it to be just more, free form as opposed to really scripted makes that investment of time and money and your customers, that much more valuable to everybody in the room.
And let me just emphasize something for just because it needs to be said out loud. The best thing we as analysts can do for a vendor is to amplify their customers' voices.
Yeah.
Our voices, well, we're experts. We've been doing this for decades. Blah 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 blah. At the end of the day, it's what do other customers think? What do peers think? And with all due respect to our journalist colleagues, that deep expertise, that in the trenches, decades of work, gives us the ability to amplify the voice in a way that you're not going to get from a 15-minute interview the journalist takes, and then even if you give them the exclusive blah blah blah. So I want to really push back a little bit on the idea again that you have to protect customers from us or from some version of the truth. We are the way in which your story can be told, the good part of the story, better than any way else, because we're the ones who can really help get those customer voices amplified. And I would really emphasize that's a value that sometimes gets lost in the control and what was the term your AI tool used? The slathering problem.
Yeah. So we're not halfway through the deck, but we are halfway through the show. There's two things that haven't come out yet that are important to my views that I want to mention now, and let's keep an eye on them as the slides go forward. One is that this isn't just about events. This is my push is kind of about how do we create a year round dialogue that keeps pace with the pace of change today. So that's one of my big talking points. And also, how do we quote unquote measure the better ways of engaging? Because I believe that we do have to have that KPI discussion to arm analyst relations directors with really good supporting points on the kinds of viewpoints that we're advocating today. And a third and smaller point that ties into that is that analysts have to be part of the solution too. And at times that means we have to change and we have to adapt and we lose the plot too. And so these slides don't really pick up on that as much, but it is something that I do include in my writing. And if we have time to get to one of my videos that I generated, you'll see a little more of that snark directed back at analysts as well. And Sarita likes the point around the amplifying the customer stories. And I think we all agree with that intimate understanding of the customer is beautiful. And to me, like if you're a vendor, there's nothing better than going onto, LinkedIn, dare I say it, not my favorite platform, and seeing someone like Josh Urbani like interacting with other people without the vendor in sight, but explaining how customers feel about certain issues in a much more nuanced way than the kind of viral sensationalism that tends to dominate these channels. So I think that is the big payoff when you invest in that, is that then you start to see more informed conversations happening about you and your relationship with customers than you could have hoped to have otherwise. All right, we're only on slide 5, but I think it's only like 15. So okay, so next gen analyst relations is one of my catchphrases. It doesn't really matter what we call it. The idea is looking ahead. It's about delivering better projects. That's how I see it anyway. Any comments on this?
We just discussed that. AR is making customers more successful. What are we doing? If analysts aren't making customers successful, what do we do?
There we go. All right, let's just move on then. Okay, here's our little year-round cycle, and this pertains. I wrote a book on this, so if anyone really wants to read about it, check out the book. But it basically the notion just being that the buyers aren't static. They're rethinking all the time. They're not linear, and more than ever, and we could use the AI word as part of this. I think they need a lot of advisory from their peers, from their most successful peers, from independence, from nuanced media coverage. All of that is part of this constant buyer engagement that's going on. And I've mapped out kind of how analyst relations fit into that. And I think we have to start thinking about analyst relations in that capacity rather than the occasional longer debriefs and once a year analyst days. Any comments on that?
Yeah. So in terms of, buyers doing their own research, 70% of them are looking online. They're talking to their peers. They're looking on LinkedIn. They're looking buyer reviews, or Raven reviews if they're looking at implementation to understand, like, what is the voice of customer? What are other, peers like me saying? I think that the analysts have the opportunity to be a huge influence in this because they're writing out there, they have followership, and it's those sort of informal sidebar discussions and the mention in just social that I think has more groundswell than any formalized white paper report that's put out there. And, the best opportunity is to influence that through these analyst relations days or, getting analysts introduced to customers because we're going to write about it. I mean, that's our favorite thing to write about is the customer experience. And so I think it's a great way to get that message to customers before they're actively in a buying process.
John, put that slide back up, please. Because
Okay.
you need
I'll go back to
John is a
Tim. I'll go
genius.
back to your comments in a second. Okay,
You-
slide is
John
back
is
up.
a real kudo here because this is really seminal work and very, very important distinction between a lot of the quote unquote, metric driven analyst relations and frankly pipeline analysis that I've seen. This notion that this journey starts before they talk to vendors, this notion that they are only in buying mode at a certain moment really belies the false wisdom that pipeline analysis, as many companies do it today, works. In other words, and I believe me, as an independent, I have heard more often than I care to mention, well, we don't see you in our pipeline. And the answer is yeah, because you show me the pipeline, which one AR person did, and she never crossed my path again. And it went through this long analysis of how the decision got made. And I said to her, where was the conversation I had in yours? Where was the time I spoke in front of the user group to that customer? Where was the time that John and I buttonholed somebody in the hallway? Where was the time that person read something we wrote or commented on? And they were, we don't know how to measure that. And I said, so therefore it doesn't exist. Get out of my way. And I just want to say that those points that you have in that slide are super important for folks to understand how it really happens, how the sausage is really made, not the way we want the sausage to be made, because it's the thing we can measure. And
So thanks for that. And just real quick on that, like that was why I wrote the book, is because I wanted to reframe the model. And the other piece of it was this notion that B2B buyers are always learning and always building their networks of trust around them. And 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 beyond that, there's this understanding that that you can measure more of that than we do. It's not easy, but multi-touch attribution models that are powered by data and some forms of AI can help us there. But we do have to measure this dynamically all the time and figure out how these things happen that influence these decisions. And so that's part of our collective challenge is to develop better metrics around it. And we'll get to that a little bit more. One quick thing, Tim Crawford has factored heavily in some of the articles I've written on this topic on Diginomica. Hi, Tim. Great to see you. Analysts need direct engagement with customers. However, many don't have access to those engagements. And then you spoke previously about that unfettered customer voice, having the customer talk about a vendor in their own words. I totally agree with that. And, if there was one thing I would want to get across is that I have a lot of respect for the AR directors who are pushing the envelope, many of whom are in this discussion today. And I think there's so much more that can happen there. Like, so for example, it's been more than a decade now, but I was at a show with a customer panel as part of a keynote that was totally awesome. There were no vendor execs on the stage. The customer moderated the panel, and everyone on the panel was a customer. And and
Yeah, I was there. I remember.
and
That. Yeah.
that shouldn't be a once a decade experience, right? Like let's when you're getting stuff done as a vendor, set your customers free to tell us all about it, and that's really impressive. We're getting some good questions in the chat. Is it your take that paid marketing has no real lift on this? No, definitely not. It's basically, Guy, it's more like how many topics can you cover in one webinar or one event today. So paid marketing isn't the focus of today's event, but absolutely,
It's one of the factors.
yeah,
Absolutely.
100%. But generally speaking, like, really good paid marketing, I think, is attached to really compelling narratives and really compelling content. And in the end, that's human created content, though AI can help personalize and distribute that. But that's another comment for a different show as well. Brian, B2B buyers rarely get enough time to really vet new potential vendors. They rarely have enough time to keep up. Buyers want to be cosmopolitan. They need fast, impartial inputs to help them shape the shortlist and key selection criteria. I think Brian nailed it down too. There is part of like why we need a more year-end mentality. Things are moving too fast now, and they need people they can trust inside and outside their organizations, and that's a big part of what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
All right, let's progress. I think this is sort of a repetition of other stuff we've covered. Any comments?
Well, the format. I think the layout is right. Schoolroom, versus comfortable, table with. I assume that figure on the right is only should be moving around and interacting, as peers, not as a bunch of kids in school watching what's going on.
Bonnie, I want to ask you about one thing on this slide real quick, because I like what quote unquote AI did with this mix the ecosystem phrase, and I actually put partners in that as so I had a limited ability to revise this deck, and I added the partners in there because I felt like we had not talked about partners yet, and partners, I think, are a really important and sometimes neglected part of this dialogue. Granted, sometimes they can slip over into sales mode, so they can need a little coaching sometimes. But you spent a lot of time studying partners and services ecosystems. How do you perceive the role of partners in what we're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I think it's really important to convey the partner ecosystem, to describe how is deployment and implementation done. And most of these vendors have third-party consulting firms that are doing their implementation. If that is the case, that should be part of the presentation, to talk about how are you assigning partners to your engagements? How, what does your ecosystem composition look like? How are you evaluating partners to make sure that they're of high quality and, serving your clients well? To me, it's usually done by the VP of partner ecosystem slash alliances. Sometimes it's too much of a flyover, and you really don't get a sense for how the ecosystem actually is composed. Is it a bunch of resellers, or are these, is the vendor reliant on these firms to make sure that their product goes live? And if that is the case, they should have a very detailed part of the session, which includes, how does someone become a partner? How are you ensuring quality delivery for all of these deployments? And, how are you thinking about growth within the partner ecosystem? All of those things, again, we've seen them, I think, all of us, that section of the analyst day done really well, or it's a footnote, and yeah, big partner ecosystem, and we really love them, and they're doing a great job. But that's about the extent of detail we get. To me, that's a huge miss, because partners are part of the brand of a software vendor. And to not get into the details is to really escape some of what's important.
Josh.
I just want to add to the mix, and I'm going to throw a very controversial idea. One of the folks that I would love to have in the room to just dialogue with. They're sort of mixing it up. Are financial analysts, particularly obviously for the publicly traded vendors. I think and this would I'm going to say out loud, this would do them a huge favor because frankly, as we all know, those of us in this world, Wall Street doesn't really understand enterprise software. The crazy things that's going on with the stocks right now is a perfect example of companies that pretty much every enterprise software company lost 50% of its value in the last year for reasons that have no bearing on their ability to make their customers successful. I think it would help them, the vendors, and ultimately the customers they serve, to have maybe some of us talking to some of these financial analysts and vice versa, give them a little bit of a better perspective of what's really going on.
Indeed. And I love getting calls. I get calls from a few of them from time to time. We have great arguments, and we don't see the enterprise the same way, but that's fantastic dialogue. I want to say just briefly that I don't want to be too event driven, but the partner panel is an underrated and often non-existent part of these analyst day events. If you get the right partners, especially the ones that are disruptive, not the typical systems integrator, big players we all know, but some of your upstart partners that are building cool new stuff and changing how customers are being served. Like those are fantastic partners to talk with, and it's a missed opportunity. Josh and Bonnie, I want to.
John, what I would go on to say, for every GSI, there should be 2 independents that come.
There you go. All right.
Yes, sorry. Okay.
So I want to blast through the next couple because I want to get to the KPI part of this because we are running low on time and I don't want to miss this part of the conversation, and we're getting closer to the end of the deck here. So this is just an anecdote of the kind of magic you can't script. This is a real life example. Someone in the chat, I think, was involved in this. And, just the example of how, relationship with customers can lead to problem solving, and the analyst can make a difference for a customer. And that can be big numbers. And those numbers typically aren't tracked. And then we get questions about, the value of these types of engagements from a more unstructured perspective. Well, here you go. This one is just another comment on analyst days. It's about keeping it interactive. I like the line, analysts like to argue, let them. I think that's true to a point. And then there's a point where sometimes you have to step in and say, can the 2 analyst egos in the room, that's right, I said it, analyst egos, step out into the hallway for a little bit and resolve that yourselves.
John, along that point, I said it before, moderating and facilitating the discussion is an art form.
Yeah.
And sometimes the questions get too verbose and things like that. The masterful AR folks know how to rein in those sort of things that happen, and give every question sort of its due time, and sort of make sure that people aren't asking 5 questions when there's just not enough time for that. So yeah, you have to. I mean, if you're an AR and doing the facilitation, sometimes you have to be harsh and cut people off.
I sometimes call this the paradox of participatory events, as they require, ironically, a higher degree of sophistication around facilitation skills. And by the way, I advise on creative event design, and I often don't really charge for it because I love doing it. So we can always talk more about that, but I really don't want to talk about that. I thought this slide was overly dramatic.
I don't even understand that.
But this notion of KPI culture not going away, refusing to measure engagement is a luxury we can't afford. The next few slides are about this topic, and I want to talk about it with you all because, I had a debate at CRM Convos on this topic with a few AR directors that were speaking. I was just in the peanut gallery, chiming in, and they did a great job on the conversation. But the essence of the debate was there were a couple people kind of saying you can't measure this type of stuff. And my point was, not only can you measure some of it, you have to measure some of it, because otherwise you won't be able to build this parallel path. There's very few analyst relations directors anymore that have the kind of unquestioned buy-in of some CEO that's been there for 20 years or lets them do whatever they want. Everyone's got to justify their existence now. We need to help analyst relations directors justify the kinds of things we're advocating. And I do believe that a lot of it can be measured. Now, can you measure all of it? No, of course not. You have a magical conversation with someone who's like moved up to the CEO level that you've known for 20 years, and you give them some insights. Of course, you're never going to measure all of that, but the point is you can measure some of it, and I think we have to try. And this is the first of several slides that tries to articulate that. Any comments?
Right. I'll
No.
say that this is the point I made earlier with the AR person who just left the interactions independent analysts might have out of the pipeline because it couldn't measure it, and it is tricky to measure. But missing it is really missing, truly not understanding both the value of good analysis and of course the value of independent analysts.
One interesting thing about this slide is that the pink stuff at the bottom is basically completely made up by AI. I didn't write that, and you won't find that in my writing on this topic. And I don't think it's total BS to say that it can't be measured. I think it's a legitimate debate, and it's an important one. Um, from vanity metrics to value signals. Now, these vanity metrics are, I think, a little bit randomized, but anyway, I like the concept of moving from vanity metrics to value signals. What are your thoughts on these?
It's interesting because to me the metric that I would push back on much more is the one about um, I can see I can get data from one of the big three analysts on the number of queries they had for their quadrant or their trapezoid, and that's one of my key metrics is just those interactions. You don't measure interactions in the same way. You don't quantify them for me the way that they do that. So this whole slide deck, I'm not sure these are metrics. I don't know AR people who look at that first deck slide deck. We didn't think that matters at all. Um,
Yeah, and I think every company is going to have to some extent uh, capture their own metrics, but I think part of the point is you will need to have a mechanism to capture it much more continuously. And once you capture it, then you need the kind of multi-touch mechanisms that allow it to be resurfaced later, instead of looking at only the most recent contact that shifted a customer's behavior. You have to be able to go back, but you can't go back if you don't capture it. What exactly you capture, I think we could probably honestly have a whole session on that. And to the AR directors who have made it this far into this discussion and have and have not said the heck with this or whatever, uh, obviously we're representing more of a independent analyst viewpoint here, but I'd love to hear from any of you who are working on quote unquote measuring more of this magic, because I do think it's part of the future. And that's the area where I'm trying to advance my research on this topic the most at the moment. So if you have case studies, insights, or even off the cuff observations on how you've been able to do that, I would welcome that. Tim Crawford says, hearing more AR leaders thinking about the value each analyst brings, in some cases tying to revenue, in other cases tying to insights and outcomes. Absolutely. I mean, we have to figure out how to do this, and we got to figure out how to do it together, because otherwise the parallel path doesn't expand into a robust framework. It lingers on the edges with us grabbing those moments wherever we can instead of having it be front and center. So anyway, here's another take on that from the deck from AI. This is AI's recommendations for us. Comments?
So, getting back to what Tim had mentioned before, that, an easy KPI is measuring revenue, right? That's one that they can pull from Salesforce, right? And attribute, dollars with the current pipeline associated with, let's say, an advisory deal. I think that the other KPIs, though, that this slide is bringing up in here are more about risk aversion, right? So having analysts provide feedback on future direction of product that can help grow the pipeline in ways that aren't necessarily attributable to an individual, but important to have that feedback, and, avoid risk in the future or make decisions that are more impactful as it relates to revenue overall. So, I mean, I think it's, tying AR impact to quarterly and annual revenue only, I think is a miss because there's a lot bigger value to the business than just what happened this quarter for sales or this year for sales.
Right. Guy makes an interesting point. While this may not be the total answer, the data needs to come from events that are trackable, uh, meaning not reliant on staff filling in data. Yeah, ideally, it would be a bit of a combination where some of that could be automated and automatically pulled from various meeting summaries and all of that. Uh, but uh, but yeah, if someone impacts a $10 million deal, uh, and your staff has a problem spending 30 seconds documenting that, then I think you need to rethink that. But I do agree that more of this does need to be automated, and that's part of the solution as well.
I
Um,
mean, the unscripted dinner intro issue is a problem, and yeah.
and Tim says candidly, it's hard to tie directly, but it is the right direction to be thinking, and I think that kind of summarizes it as well. I'm not going to sit here and present you with an easy toolkit for measuring the magic because it doesn't exist. But this is absolutely the conversation that needs to happen because otherwise, it's things aren't going to change. It's going to go back to the volume that we can measure and that AI loves to inhale. Sarita, thanks. Really appreciated your input. It was really an honor to have folks like yourself in the chat, really providing your perspective on all of this. You're going to miss the video that I'm going to show. That's more from the AR director perspective, but the good news is that replays are available. So have a great one, and I will get to that video in a sec because I know we're running a little low on time. Oh, I like the contrast between the corporate treadmill and the serendipity engine. Can we all ride the serendipity engine instead of the corporate treadmill? I mean, that
The
sounds
yellow
pretty
brick
good to me.
road. Yeah, I like it.
I'm not sure what a serendipity engine is exactly. That's an AI generated phrase.
But it is perhaps acknowledging that not everything not everything can be predicted, not everything can be measured accurately. That it is going to be sidebar conversation. There is going to be that chance in interaction, that intangible. Yes.
And Brian points out part of the problem, there's a lot of intangible analyst value that AR teams might not see. For example, what's the ROI of an analyst coaching a CEO, uh, surfacing, facilitating a potential acquisition, referring a great candidate for an open executive slot? For sure. And that's part of the problem here. And like I said, we're never going to capture it all, but I reject the idea that we can't capture
Right.
more. And you know,
We
and I
try to
and
do that.
yeah, exactly. And multi-touch attribution is a thing. This isn't like something I just thought up today. You can invest in it, you can make it real, and once you have a multi-touch attribution system in place, it starts to make a lot more sense in terms of what you can incorporate. Okay, Josh and Bonnie, I really want to get to my video collateral. It's not a long video, but I want to show it because it's fun. So do you have any more comments on the KPIs thing? Because I want to make sure we covered off any of your comments on that.
Other than the fact that we need to keep pushing this idea and have more more conversations like this, because we need to help our AR friends do a better job. But they definitely the smart ones, would take the help, and I would love to help them. So let's keep trying.
Yeah, and the AR directors on this call, like, we're here to help with that. We want to help with that, and we realize that we have to be part of the solution, and that's something I really want to emphasize because the slide deck was a little bit cheeky and snarky, but we want to help here. That's why we're doing this on a Friday afternoon in the middle of the summer when we could all be whatever tropical drinks in hand. Guy says Bonnie mentioned revenue focus, and I could not agree more. Front end actions tie to back end results. The trackable and is pretty objective. Yep, anything we can objectively measure, that's great. Tim agrees with Brian. Customer advisory sessions, private roundtables, they're incredibly impactful, but aren't visible publicly.
So let me ask Brian out loud. Unless we self-report this in some way, it doesn't get
Right.
measured. But maybe that's one of the solutions to figure out a self-reporting mechanism, because we are all doing that. And I think it's super important to have someone acknowledge that this is what's happening.
Yep. And sometimes that those revenue indicators or KPIs aren't necessarily like we know that, but it didn't make it into their reporting mechanism, whether that's Salesforce or however they tie an analyst interaction to an opportunity. And so I think that it's a wake up call for all of us to make sure that we are communicating with the vendor. Hey, I had, calls with these clients and things like that to continue to show them, hey, we're actively involved with your customers as well. I mean, they should know that, but again, we're tracking it on our side. So
Indeed. Okay, so just real quick, shout out to Liz Miller of Constellation, who's also been a great uh, uh, person of input into my reports, and it's always good to see Liz's hand shoot up in an event because I know something good is usually coming. Uh, this isn't the summation of Liz's feedback, by the way. This is a warning, but Liz also paid a hearty tribute to those that engage with us uh, and put up with us in my piece. That's the closure of my most recent piece on Diginomica. So that's just a quick shout out to Liz. So now I'm going to remove this slide deck from the stage, and I'm going to attempt to get this video going here. Let me find this. Okay, so Josh and Bonnie, we just want to go through this before we wrap up. This is kind of fun, but so when you load up this stuff in a notebook LLM, you can do all kinds of stuff with it, including mind maps. And I did a book outline in case I ever want to do a short book on this. But I also created a bunch of different kinds of collateral, and I prompted things differently. And I felt like the slide deck went down a little hard on AR directors. So I did a prompt that emphasized that AR directors have a tough job putting up with analysts as well. And I asked them to do it in a film noir style. So once again, the reason AI can do this is because it's been trained on a bunch of folks who made film noir content, and those folks deserve to be compensated for their efforts. So with that disclaimer in mind, let's what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to take a couple breaks, but let's watch a couple minutes, then I'll take a quick break. This is 7 minutes long, so we may not want to watch the whole thing. Here we go.
Analyst Relations Director.
Okay, let's start
Picture
again.
this. You're an Analyst Relations Director. It's a tough beat. You're constantly pounding the pavement in the murky, high-stakes world of enterprise tech, trying to wrangle executives, control narratives, and appease some of the most persnickety, over-traveled industry analysts in the game. Well, welcome to our explainer today. We're taking a hard look at the gritty, exhaust fume-filled reality of traditional AR, and based on our source material, we're shedding light on a much brighter, far more effective path forward.
To really understand the pain points of this industry, we have to start right at the scene of the crime. Diginomica's John Reed perfectly captures the rain-soaked struggles of dealing with high-maintenance industry analysts. He points out that you'd be hard-pressed to find more divas, fussers, curmudgeons, and eccentrics gathered in one bland hotel fishbowl. But there's a flip side here. If you can actually charm them into putting down their phones and ignoring social media for just a few minutes, these are incredibly smart, committed people who can ask the exact questions that push an entire industry forward. Section 1. The murky world of AR. So right now, according to the sources, we are stuck on this legacy treadmill, looking at two completely diverging paths. On the one hand, we have legacy AR. It's built on static, annualized reports. It relies heavily on controlled narratives and chases these arbitrary, sometimes pay-to-play grid placements that take months to compile, meaning they're often completely outdated the very moment they're published. On the other hand, we have next-gen AR, and this is the transparent future the sources argue we absolutely must pivot toward. We're talking about year-round networks, unmoderated dialogue, and an absolute obsession with actual customer success. Section 2. Screwing up the analyst day. Now, to understand why this pivot is so desperately needed, we need to put our magnifying glass directly on the disastrous, slide-stuffed vendor analyst day. John Reed offers a cynical, highly satirical guide on exactly how to ruin one of these events. Step 1, decide the whole purpose of the day is a massive brain dump, and just lock everyone in a windowless room with back-to-back slides. Step 2, whatever you do, do not invite real customers. They might actually say something unscripted. Step 3, if you literally have to invite customers,
Make sure you over-moderate the panel with softball questions so analysts can't dig into real issues.
So that's an AI generated take. What did you think of that overall? Do you find that type of content engaging? Is it cringy? Is it some weird combination of the two? What do you think?
I noticed that AI doesn't think film noir has many female characters. It's just my sort of
Yeah, there're not a whole lot of not a
analysis.
whole lot of female protagonists in the film noir samples, I would say.
Uh,
What do you think, Bonnie? You've experimented a lot with AI multimedia. Do you find that is that engaging? Is it kind of bland? What is it?
um, so I find the audio dialogue where within Notebook, you have two participants uh, discussing a topic with one another. I feel like that is the best. I think the ones that try to do the explainer video, um, there's something that gets lost in that seems more manufactured. However, the podcasting where they take a topic and dialogue it amongst themselves, to me, really, like, again, as long as you fed it good information, I felt like that has been something that's made me learn and think. This to me,
Okay.
I'm gonna say more cringy than cool.
Yeah. Alan's smiling too much of this. Yeah, look, Alan. I mean, we got to have fun, and Guy thinks it's slop. And look, I think there's a really good argument to be made that's fairly slop. The one thing I would say is I thought those first 2 minutes that we played did represent my personal views pretty well. But that doesn't mean it's not sloppy in the end. Now, Bonnie mentioned the interactive, which is a popular format of two uh, AI voices going at it a little bit. I personally am not in love with that format either, but let's have a little bit of a listen. This is audio only, so that's why you just see that picture of me in the background. And by the way, these things I'm playing are not available on YouTube. These are private videos. I'm not going to release this crap on my channel. But let's listen to this audio format, and this gets into the evaluation topic.
Welcome to the debate. For decades, Analyst Relations has sort of been ruled by this. Well, the slide dump. Locking analysts in a room and just talking at them.
Yeah, talking at them for hours just to secure a little dot on a magical industry grid.
Exactly. So today we are asking what happens if we just completely abandon that model.
I mean, it is a terrifying thought. You really have to empathize with AR directors here. Their everyday struggle is, well, it's intense. They are juggling executives on one side who demand perfect product narratives, and let's laugh at ourselves a bit here, analysts who can be, frankly, notoriously persnickety.
Oh, absolutely. Over-traveled divas expecting the red carpet treatment everywhere they go.
Right. So, abandoning that structured brain dump to let them just free roam, it feels way too risky when executives are demanding hard ROI.
I get that. I really do. But that brings us to the core tension today. I think AR needs to stop relying entirely on these highly controlled, scripted events. Like, we need to shift to this parallel path of unfiltered, year-round two-way dialogue.
Unfiltered dialogue sounds great on paper, sure.
It is great, and it focuses on customer success. Plus, we actually have the tools to measure it now.
Okay, but look at the pragmatic reality. Those massive industry grids dictate enterprise budgets, right?
Well, yeah, they do.
So analysts literally have checklists. They are paid to evaluate specific product features. If you replace a structured deep dive with like a casual networking session, the analyst goes back to their desk without the exact data they need to justify your placement.
Wait, I'm not saying we hide the product specs, but to create real value, we have to stop teaching to the test. When AR directors orchestrate these heavily moderated customer panels, it's essentially, well, it's like putting a straitjacket on the conversation.
Okay, so that is an example of that sort of more debate style audio. I frankly, it didn't get my points of view very well. I think the first couple of minutes at all, and I don't advocate for getting rid of all the traditional analyst frameworks. So it didn't set it up right. But anyway, I'm curious what you all think of that. What was that engaging for you?
No, I thought that was really unctuous and overwrought, and a perfect example of sloppy slop. It wasn't even good slop.
Yeah, I thought that was actually very cringe. I thought it was terrible. I actually think the video was better.
Much
But
better. Bonnie?
Bonnie?
I mean, I don't know the information it was trained on, but probably not a lot. Um, because yeah, it was too much of a flyover to have any significant uh depth or content that I'd find useful.
Right. Now one thing to point out is that like when you generate this stuff, like there's not a whole lot of editing in for example, a lot of these tools like Notebook, but what you can do is you can kind of try again. Like so you can issue a new prompt and do something different and try a different format. And some are better than others. The slides actually you can revise a little bit. And I thought as far as the caliber of the material, I think the slides that we went through today, while imperfect, were far better than the multimedia stuff that I just showed you and other multimedia that I tried to do. But I will say that to Bonnie's point around the podcast point counterpoint, for my AI research, I generated a longer one. Like it's almost 30 minutes long, and that's based on like 50 different documents of research. And I found the back and forth to be interesting to me because it's my research, and I liked how they kind of juxtaposed one idea against the other. But when I was thinking about releasing that publicly, I was like, no, it just it's too many problems, too many ways it didn't represent the points of view accurately, and ultimately, who wants to listen to robots talking for 30 minutes? Like, I think the more interesting thing, and I know Bonnie, you've explored this, would be like if that were done on a for a particular client where they could listen to stuff about them, right? So in other words, instead of like that, because if I issued the AI podcast, just people arguing, there's all kinds of AI stuff they could listen to. But if I issued one to a company that's specifically about their strategy with their data, I think they might find that more interesting because they couldn't find that elsewhere. Anyway,
Yeah, and you can customize the personalities of the hosts. You can tell it, I want this to be 2 minutes long, and
yep.
here's the specific topics I want discussed. Where I have found it more helpful is if I'm not educated on a particular topic or don't have the depth of knowledge that I'd like to have, it's a great way to explore things sort of quickly in a format that's easy to absorb.
Indeed. So Shashi wants to know about the word persnickety.
Get
Uh,
the dictionaries.
per, persnickety, yeah, it is along the lines of funny and snide. It's not generally considered a compliment, Shashi. It's on.
Yeah, it's someone whose persnickety is somewhat deliberately and without shame being a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
But in almost a cute way. So
Yeah.
it's not could be it's not as gruff as a curmudgeon. It's not there's no particular evil implied.
Yeah, your robot's feeling lonely and welcomes any robot conversations. Well, Shashi, if your robot wants to talk about next gen AR, we could maybe meet the two of them up. They could have a really nice back and forth. But what I thought was really interesting from this, to be honest with you, like using these tools, was the outlines that were generated were amazing. The mind maps were really interesting in terms of organizing like the structure behind the material. It kind of showed me ways that it could structure. I thought that was really cool. And then also it's fascinating how different prompts created a different tone, right? So you noticed how the slide deck didn't really poke a lot of fun at analysts at all, right? But in both the media that we watched, analysts kind of took it on the chin for being kind of persnickety and high maintenance. Of
There were a
course,
lot of comments. Yeah.
of course, of course, we're not persnickety or high maintenance at all, right?
We're pains in
Um,
the ass, let's be honest.
Okay, anyway, thank you for hanging it a little over time to review the media. These folks have extended their stay for me, so thank you for doing that. We do need to go. Thank you all for joining. That was an absolutely fabulous audience. It sounds like we need to revisit this topic again in the future, so we will. In the meantime,
It was wonderful. Thank you.
have a great summer. Bye,
Thanks, you.
everyone.
And it worked. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Woohoo! Wi-Fi held out. Yay.
Oh, yeah. Okay.